Okay, so I'm going to start putting the power brake booster back together. And if you remember, there were four groups basically: the hydraulic cylinder, the vacuum control valve, the vacuum piston and shell, and then the check valve. So I'm going to go ahead and put together whatever I can into those four subgroups. So the first thing you do, start with the vacuum piston shaft, and you put the flat washer on it. And these plates are different sizes. One's bigger than the other one. You start with the big one, and inside this diameter hole is chamfered right here. So you put it on with the chamfer side up. Then this O-ring goes over it, and ideally the O-ring is fitted down into that chamfer. Then you put the leather packing on, the new leather packing with the lip up, and then you put the smaller plate on, and also has a chamfered edge on the inside of this small diameter. This is square, and there's your chamfer, and your chamfer goes down so that it's sandwiching the O-ring. And pop that on there like that. Then you put the cotton wick around the edge. Okay. All right. Then you put the retainer in, and the retainer is actually directional. It's or rather the expander ring. It's got little points here that grip onto the cotton wick, and those points should point up. So this is going to go inside like that with the points pointing up. Alright, so that's keeping a little bit of tension on the cotton wick, pushing it outwards against the leather packing. And also, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little notch. The top of this expander, this loop obviously has to go on top of this part, but there's a little notch right there. You want to spread it out, and it hooks right in that little notch right there. So that's that. Next is the retainer plate with the cutout that goes over the expander right there, just like that. Then this nut goes on. Now you would take this out and put it in the vise, this hex head, put this hex in the vise, tighten this down really tight, and then stake it so that it's not going to come loose. Okay, so I set that aside. Now I'm going to assemble the check valve. And I've cleaned this up in alcohol. drop the check ball down in there. This is concaved on one side, making it convex on the other. You drop the convex side down first, and it's going to center itself on that spring. There we go. And then the snap ring, if you look down inside, you probably can't see it, but there's a groove there for the snap ring. And you push that into place. So when you push the snap ring in, actually the retainer that's on top of the spring shares the groove with the snap ring, so it's a little difficult to get in. You may be better off putting it in a vise because you kind of need a third hand. But I know you can't see it, but that's what it looks like. Check valve is assembled. Alright, next thing I'll do is I can do a little bit on the vacuum control valve. I've been dying to throw this nasty thing away. And also, while I'm thinking about it, I like to lay out my new parts and get rid of my old parts. I'll put them in the used parts bin here. Poppet valve. Used parts bin. So can't do anything with the diaphragm yet, but I can put the poppet in. Top of it, the new one unscrews just like the old one. Drops right into place here. And the top screws back on. Alright. Then small conical shaped spring goes in. The small end of the spring goes right over that poppet valve screw, the head of that screw. Next, this screen here has the indentation. It's concave on one side, convex on the other. The convex side goes down and it goes inside the upper portion of the conical shaped spring. Push that down, and then a snap ring goes in to hold that in place. Okay, I like to look at the snap ring under magnification to make sure it's seated all the way around in the groove. Next piece to go in is the filter element. Kind of like this old filter element. It looks like it's possibly horsehair, maybe. Could probably be washed and reused. The new one you get with the kit's foam rubber, which foam rubber decomposes after a while and becomes brittle, and I'm not a big fan of that, but I'm gonna just go ahead and use it. And then you install the top screen, depress it down inside, and it's held in place by another snap ring. Make sure I'm in the groove all the way around. So that's that sub-assembly. That's all we can do there. Set that aside. And next will be inside the vacuum control is this piston. I've cleaned this out, and this also gets a new O-ring. I'm going to take this old O-ring, throw it away. And find the new O-ring, put it on there. There's actually a groove in the underside of the hex head for that O-ring. And like I said, I've cleaned this out. I ran a little bit of 3000 sandpaper in there, and I sanded this piston with 3000 sandpaper as well, just to clean it up, and then washed it in alcohol. And the piston goes in with this hole up facing the hex head side, and it could go in either way, but it's easier to go in this way. Also, I'm installing it dry, but before I put everything together in the final assembly, I'll wet everything down with brake fluid. So don't be alarmed when you see me putting this together dry. So that's that little sub-assembly. This retainer washer goes on top to keep the piston from popping out. And this snap ring, this is a modern looking snap ring. I don't think this is an original snap ring. Let me see if I have a new one, in fact. Okay, I swapped that for a new one. This one looks like it might, one of the sides is kind of turned up on it, so that's going in the used parts bin. So that's the piston assembly that goes in the vacuum control assembly. So that's another sub-assembly. Alright, now I'm just going to set that out of my way. The old filter is going in the used parts. Move all this stuff, and so next I can put together the check valve that goes in the end cap. And if you recall, this spring is conical. One end is smaller diameter than the other. The smaller diameter goes against the check valve because it seats. If you try to put it in the other way, it doesn't work. So I just want to put that in nice and square. Oops. Alright. Alright. So there's that. Alright, now this is a little trick to putting this in. Taking the bleeder screw out because you need the bleeder screw hole. And a steel rod. Because you put this stop washer on here and you've got to push the assembly down and try to get this snap ring on down inside. And it's down in there about an inch or so. It's very difficult. The only way to do it is to take a steel rod, the only way I can figure to do it, and just use a socket to depress the spring and the stop washer. It's got to go all the way down past the groove for the snap ring, holding it in. Insert the steel rod through the bleeder hole till it grabs one side of the retainer, and push it on in as you pull the socket out, because this will go flying. This assembly here will go flying. Use your thumb to depress the other side so that you've got the steel rod all the way through holding both sides. I can also use, because the steel rod's long, I can use the length of it on my work surface and tilt this back and forth, and that gets the stop washer down in the hole nice and square. Then the trick is to get the snap ring in, and I put the open end of the snap ring towards where the steel rod's coming in through the bleeder valve. I think that's how I did it. And you get, yeah, you get one side to start. This is not easy and can be very frustrating. Get one side to start. It doesn't have to quite start. If you can get a hold to the other side and push it down into the smaller diameter, like that, the snap ring is down into the smaller diameter, but it's not in the groove. You got to be careful too, because if this steel rod malfunctions, the whole works goes flying out, and you might wind up looking for parts on the floor. So again, I'm going to use the leverage of the long steel rod and rotate this forward. And with a screwdriver, I push both ends of the snap ring into the groove and get it started. Put my thumb over it and slowly pull the steel rod out a little bit, just enough to get the snap ring past the steel rod. And it's kind of a trick, be careful. And it snapped down into the groove. It looks correct. It's in the groove all the way around, so I can take the steel rod out. I'm going to cover it up just in case. Yeah. So that's how you get that in. And now, so this is the end cap assembly, ready to go together as a sub-assembly. Next, I went ahead and put the ball, the check ball in, the very delicate little brass spring in, and this retainer, and I popped the snap ring in. And I was practicing doing it, and once I got it in, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it in because it's kind of difficult to do that. And taking it out, this is the tricky part. When you take it out, this is what will go flying out. And of course, we have a new rubber seal that goes on, and this is supposed to all go on wet, and I'm not putting it on wet right now. Right now, the cup lip goes towards the check valve side. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on dry. And the reason I'm putting this all together dry is because right now, I'm not going to completely put this together right now. And I just want to wait. I don't want it sitting around wet and possibly making a mess. I'm kind of just carefully pushing that cup into the groove all the way around so that it's seated properly. The inner cup has a kind of a hard time getting over this lip right there, so just very delicately take a screwdriver and make sure it's in all the way around. And then I believe I can put this on now, this retainer, and the retainer nut, which is again that little spring steel piece that you had to walk off with the sharp point of your razor without cutting yourself. I can pop that on. And so that is the hydraulic piston assembly. And keeping the pin over here with it. I'm going to set it aside so it doesn't get lost. And now the next thing is I can put the other side of the hydraulic cylinder assembly together. And this was a problem for me during the disassembly because I mistook this beveled flat washer for this one. I did not realize there was another flat washer down in the bore of the end plate. And I found another schematic online that showed the spring, the metal beveled washer, and this retainer. And it actually showed the three of them together on the schematic, and they were bracketed, and it said that this 3-item assembly took the place of the original retainer. So also in going online and looking around, I found out that there's a whole lot of hydrovac systems made by different companies, and even the Bendix hydrovac assembly. There are variations and several different model numbers. So I got a little panicky when the sequence of parts didn't seem to match the schematic that's in the Cadillac service manual. And they don't match. I don't quite understand why this update wasn't in either the 54 or the 55 part of the service manual. Alright, so now, like I said, I can assemble this section into the end plate, but I don't think I'm going to do it on video because it is extremely difficult. I've tried to practice this and it's quite a struggle. I'll go ahead and I get a new seal, vacuum shaft seal. So I take the old seal, throw it in the used parts. I get a new cup, throw that one away, put the new cup in, and the rest of the components stay the same. So let me struggle with this and see if I can get it together. I'll be right back. Alright, the first thing I'll do though is put the seal in, make sure that the lip the edge of the lip is facing the hydraulic side. Just remember you're sealing the fluid in. And I don't know if I can do this on this soft mat or not. Alright. Alright, that seems to be seated all the way down. Yeah, let's see, a couple of easy pieces. Here's that beveled washer, the fiber washer. Goes in first. Just going to push it down so that it seats all the way down. Next is the rubber cup, and this again should all go in wet. I'll just soak it before I put it completely together. Next piece is the retainer. Goes in squarely over that rubber cup. Push it all the way down. Next piece is the steel beveled stop washer. Drops right in place. Next piece is the spring. The star stop washer. And now I've got to try to compress it all down inside and pop this snap ring in. All right, I got lucky. I had mentioned before that the hooks on the open end of that snap ring, I had put that snap ring in my vise, took my hammer and peened those ends over just enough, and then I took a pair of small needle nose and I grinded to a point, and then I took a file and I filed a little groove in there. Between this and peening the ends of the snap ring over, I was able to put the needle nose in the snap ring and squeeze it, push down on the whole assembly with my finger in the middle of the snap ring, and I just pushed down as hard as I could, and I got the snap ring inside the smaller diameter, and then with my fingertip and my flat blade screwdriver I managed to hold one side of the snap ring with my finger and push the other side of the snap ring with the screwdriver, and it popped into the ring, into the groove, and so it worked out pretty good. It actually wasn't that bad. All right, so I've assembled what I can into sub-assemblies. I've got my end plate assembled with the inner hydraulic cylinder components in place. I've got my end cap assembled with the check valve in place, snap ringed in. Here's a crush washer that gets replaced. That goes inside the end cap, and then the cylinder screws into it. I've got my hydraulic piston assembled with the check valve, the seal, and the retainer and stop. And here's the pin that I don't want to lose. I've got my check valve assembled, ready to go in, and I've got my poppet valve assembled and my air intake filter system assembled in the vacuum control valve. Alright, and oh yeah, and I've got the vacuum control valve piston assembled. So what I'm waiting for, I can't keep going because they sent me 2 O-rings with the kit, but this O-ring is shaped, it's beveled, it's like square, but it's got a taper here and on each side, and it clearly fits down into here. There's a shoulder in there that's tapered up that receives this O-ring. Well, I don't want to use that round O-ring. I don't think that's right. And also these round O-rings are too big. So I got to make some phone calls Monday and find out what's going on with these components and see if I can't find those, see if I can't locate those. Oh yeah, and I also have my vacuum piston assembly ready to go in with the new leather packing. Alright, so that's it, and I guess I'll do one more video when I put it all together and get it back in the car.